he finally figured out, yeah, the gay. There's no definite get a hold of the orthopedic because it's 3 months now. The kidney doctor said, it's clearing it, I don't know,
Yeah.
Do you? But they never did anything about it. Every time it hurts, I feel
Wow. That's what I want to do right there. Last week it wouldn't let me do this. Live. No, mine. My channel. Not that channel. There it is. There, okay. Playlist. Weekly Bible study. Done and done. All right, I'm ready. Assuming that you are. I think we're all here.
Somebody's just joining.
That's Judy.
Oh, okay.
And I will do this for her. There you go. Judy, I turned off your video. So you don't need to worry about it.
You turned it off. Thank you.
oh,
Okay. Well, now that we've got everything straightened out, let's get started. Shall we pray? God, in this time of tumultuous life and a world that is so fallen and broken, we know that we can go to your word, and we thank you for that. We ask that you bless this time, that we may hear something that speaks to us, so that we may speak your word to the world. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Okay, I hope we have some good news today. We still have to have some of this bad news that Hosea is proclaiming. I believe we ended in chapter 4, around verse 15. Does that sound right?
Yes.
To you who were here?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So we ended with the women aren't being punished, but the men are, because they're the Johns that should know better and go into these temple prostitutes. So yeah, so now we're sort of summarizing that in verse 15. Though you play the whore, O Israel, do not let Judah become guilty. Oh my goodness, let's try to keep Judah out of this. Even if Israel is destroyed, We want Judah to survive. And then these prohibitions: do not enter into Gilgal or go up to Beit Aven, and do not swear as the Lord lives. So there's the swearing we were talking about last week, Pastor Stephen. You're not supposed to swear by the Lord's name. In other words, taking it in vain. Gilgal was the first stop inside the promised land and was an important worship site for that reason. They sort of reenacted the Passover meal when they first landed across the Jordan at Gilgal. So now, because they have forsaken the Lord, he's saying, don't bother going to Gilgal, to that worship site. And Beit Aven is a suburb of Bethel. And Bethel was a very important worship site. That's where Jacob's ladder dream took place. And he named it, in fact, Beth El, or Beit El, the house of God, because of that dream that Jacob had as he was fleeing from his brother Laban. I mean, to his uncle Laban. He was fleeing from Esau to go to his uncle. And he had that dream where he saw angels coming up and down on a ladder. And he named it House of God, or Beth El, Beit El. So don't bother going to these important worship sites, because you've defiled the act of worship. And then you get this kind of poignant glimpse into God's heart in verse 16. Like a stubborn heifer, right? Like a stubborn cow, Israel is stubborn. Can the Lord now feed them like a lamb in a broad pasture? Right? Israel is evil. Their behavior is evil. Can we just ignore it and pretend that they're innocent little lambs that need our care? What do you think of that verse?
So who's asking the question? Can the Lord feed them now?
Well, Hosea, but speaking for God.
So is this God saying, can y'all quit acting like this so I can be kind to you, kind of thing?
Yeah, this is one of we're going to see this again as we read on, but this is one of the harder concepts, I think, for us to get, that being God's people carries a certain expectation of behavior. And there are consequences when that behavior is not according to God's plan. It's not just that, I mean, we want to say God loves us no matter what, and that's true, but it doesn't mean that there's no discipline, right? There are consequences to behavior. And we don't just get to say, oh, well, never mind.
Mhm.
Right? It's a hard concept. We don't want God to be like that. We want God to just say, oh, well, never mind. Let's keep on. Those of you who are parents, though, can relate to this, right? I mean, you love your children, but there are consequences when they misbehave. Yes? No?
Yeah, I'm struggling to see the consequences in verse 16.
Well, the consequences are that the Lord can't now treat them like innocent lambs in a pasture and give them everything they need, because they're like stubborn cows.
Like in Greek, the understood answer here is no. So basically,
Exactly.
I mean, you're acting like this. Am I supposed to feed you now like a lamb in a hunt?
Exactly.
Got it. Okay.
Exactly. When you're acting like a stubborn cow, I'm not going to treat you like an innocent lamb.
Yeah, and interesting the difference in, because I'm using the NIV and you're using the NSRV. And this one doesn't phrase it the same way. You're reading it as, can the Lord do it? Like a question.
Right.
And in the NIV, it's really not the same kind of question. It says, how can the Lord pasture them like lambs in a meadow?
Oh,
And
okay.
and
As if
it's a
it's
slight
leading you to the answer.
kind of question.
Yeah.
It's like, how do you expect me to do this? Or how can God do this if this is what you're doing?
Yeah.
And instead of saying, can God do it, which could be a yes, no answer.
I see. Yes. It's leading you to the no, God can't act that
It
way.
is. But
Yeah.
it's like, how in the world can you expect? How can God possibly do this?
Yeah.
You when you are behaving the way you're behaving.
Right.
So it is a slightly different kind of question, even though they're both questions.
And of course, this is one reason we look at multiple translations, because there is no punctuation in the original text.
Right.
You just have to figure it out based on the
Yeah.
context. So
Yeah.
the context is the distinctiveness or the opposite of being a stubborn cow or being an innocent lamb.
Yeah. And it again, the message is still you're expecting the same kind of answer, but it's really a slightly different question.
Yes, it is. Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. Yeah. Okay, so let's keep reading then. So 17, I don't know that we've encountered this before. Ephraim is how you pronounce that. Ephraim. That's, we often say Ephraim. I had an uncle, a great uncle named Ephraim, but it's technically pronounced Ephraim. Ephraim is one of the tribes, one of the 12 tribes, right, that settled in the land of Israel. And of course, the Bible has to fall all over itself to get these 12 tribes to work out, because there were 12 sons, right, of Jacob. There are 12 sons, and you'd think those would be the 12 tribes, but they're not. Because Levi, one of the sons, Levi, is a priestly tribe. So they don't get any land when it comes to apportioning the land of Israel. The priests don't get an allotment of land. They live on the donations of other people. So you have to take Levi out of the 12 sons, but that means you got to somehow get another son there to make it 12. So what happens is Joseph comes out as a son, and his two sons go in. And Joseph's two sons are Ephraim and Manasseh. So you take out Levi and Joseph and you put in Ephraim and Manasseh to get the 12 tribes. Yeah. So Ephraim is the tribe that gets the best portion of the northern kingdom. They get the central valley above Jerusalem and a big area of that fertile Jezreel Valley that we read about in chapter 1, the Jezreel Valley. So Ephraim has the biggest territory when the tribes settle the promised land. Therefore, Ephraim becomes a synonym for the whole northern kingdom, or not a synonym, but what do you call it? Shorthand. So when you see Ephraim, usually that means the whole northern kingdom, especially in this context. I mean, unless you're reading about how the land was apportioned out in Numbers, then it would just mean the tribe. But here it serves as a shorthand for Israel. Questions about that? It's confusing. I think it's interesting. Manasseh is the other grandson that gets an allotment, and Manasseh actually gets a very large territory as well, although half of the Manasseh territory is to the east of the Jordan River and half is to the west. But Ephraim's territory is completely in the territory of Israel west of the Jordan River. So it's funny that the grandsons get the most territory. Okay, you don't think that's funny. Okay, good. Let's move on. Ephraim is joined to idol.
Well, it is pretty typical. I mean, knowing how people treat their grandchildren as opposed to their children.
Yeah.
Amen.
Ephraim or Israel is joined to idols. Let him alone. Have nothing to do with him. When their drinking is ended, they indulge in sexual orgies. They love lewdness more than their glory. So again, a reference to these Canaanite fertility rites that everybody's so enamored with. Nobody's really sure what this verse 19 means. A wind has wrapped them in its wings, and they shall be ashamed because of their altars. Obviously, they're doing things that God doesn't approve of. Okay, any questions about that? About what we've covered so far? Should we move on?
Yeah.
Okay. Hear this, O priests. All right, Pastor Stephen, Pastor Becca, this is for you.
And you.
O house of Israel, listen, O house of the king. So the leaders are now being addressed for their bad behavior. Judgment pertains to you, the priests and the king and the dignitaries. You have been a snare at Mizpah, a net spread upon Tabor, and a pit dug deep in Shittim. But I will punish all of them. So these, a snare and a net and a pit are all hunting images, right? A snare to catch an animal like a trap, a net, right? That's how you capture birds, throw the net, capture the birds, and then a pit, of course, dug and animals run into it. So all of those are from the world of hunting. Mizpah is a place of the covenant between Jacob and Laban. So it's supposed to be a place of protection. There they made a covenant. Jacob and Laban made a covenant with each other not to keep fighting and to each just keep their own territory. Tabor, Mount Tabor, is a place of victory where the prophetess Deborah defeated the Canaanite king with her army. And Shittim is the last place before they crossed the Jordan. So all of these are supposed to be places of protection or victory. But instead they're being used the opposite way than they were intended. That's the point.
Isn't it interesting that there's no churches named Shittim?
Actually, no one knows what that Greek word, what that Hebrew word means, so they took that from the Greek. I think I told you the very first day that the text is difficult in many places. And so the English relies on the Greek to try to make some sense of it. But it still doesn't make a lot of sense some places. Okay, let's keep going. I know Ephraim, and Israel is not hidden from me. Now, this is God, of course, speaking. I know Ephraim. For now, O Ephraim, you have played the whore. Israel is defiled. Their deeds do not permit them to return to their God, for the spirit of whoredom is within them, and they do not know the Lord. Again, we've seen that phrase before. They do not know the Lord, or there is no knowledge of God. That's the theme of Hosea. That if there was correct or complete knowledge of God, they wouldn't be behaving this way. So in some ways, education is the answer, right? If we could just teach people what the right way is to go, they would do it. But somehow that's not working. Okay, now we get to a difficult piece. Israel's pride testifies against him. Ephraim stumbles in his guilt. Judah also stumbles with them. With their flocks and herds, they shall go to seek the Lord, but they will not find him. He has withdrawn from them. That's hard to hear, that God has withdrawn from the people. What do you think of that?
Bad news.
Yeah,
Like, fine, have it your way.
right, exactly. And we have to, this is subtle, but we have to remember that this is the people's testimony to what is going on, or Hosea's testimony. So it doesn't mean that, let me see how to say this. It doesn't mean that God has actually withdrawn. It means the people think that God has withdrawn. Does that make sense to you? Their experience is that God has withdrawn.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that God actually has withdrawn. It means that they experience God as withdrawn. And I think we can relate to that, right? There are times in our lives where we say, where the heck is God in all this? It doesn't mean that God has left us or that God is not present with us. It means that that's the way we feel. That's our experience. And that's, of course, what the whole Bible is, right? The experience of the people. So in some ways, it doesn't mean it's reality. It means it's their experience. Does that make sense to you? So an example I often give is in the Old Testament, of course, in like Numbers, it says, kill all the Canaanites. God told the Israelites to kill all the Canaanites. That's what the people thought. It doesn't mean that God actually said, kill all the Canaanites. It means that the people thought God was telling them to kill all the Canaanites.
Yeah, we've got one very blessed, and Hugh can attest to this man that was teaching our Bible study on our men's Bible study on Wednesday mornings, and he struggles so much with the Old Testament because he's like, why does God say this? You know, why is God telling them to massacre all these people? It's not really how it worked.
Right.
That was from their standpoint.
Exactly. And of course, it's reflection, it's backwards looking. So centuries later, they're saying, how did we end up in this land? Well, God led us there and then told us to kill all the inhabitants so we could have the land. It's all looking backwards. So whether that actually happened or not, or whether they were just a bloodthirsty people trying to conquer the land, we don't really know. Okay, let's keep going. They have dealt faithlessly with the Lord. They have borne illegitimate children. The new moon shall devour them along with their fields. They think they're having festivals at the new moon? Watch this. Okay. Blow the horn in Gibeah, the trumpet in Ramah. When do you blow the horn or the trumpet?
Battle.
Battle is one time. Anytime you need to get people's attention, right? You get the people to assemble.
Hmm.
Sound the alarm at Beit Aven. Look behind you, Benjamin. All these cities that they're naming are just to the north of Benjamin, or in the tribe of Benjamin. The tribe of Benjamin is settled just above Jerusalem. They're the smallest tribe. They have the smallest territory. So they're settled just above Jerusalem, which means that Ephraim, the biggest tribe, is just north of Benjamin. Are you following me? So the southern kingdom of Judah is the tribe of Judah, Jerusalem and south, and the tribe of Benjamin, which is a small strip of land just north of Jerusalem. Those two tribes make up the south. And the north is everything above that. So just north of Benjamin is the tribe of Ephraim, which we've been reading about is the shorthand for Israel. So the warning to Benjamin is, look out, the northern tribe is right on your doorstep. And look how they're behaving. You're about to get influenced by them. Be careful who you hang out with, right? Ephraim shall become a desolation in the day of punishment among the tribes of Israel. I declare what is sure. And that's exactly what happened. The tribes of Israel were conquered by the nation of Assyria, and Judah remained. The princes of Judah have become like those who remove the landmark. That is not a good thing. That's against the law to remove the landmark. On them I will pour out my wrath like water. Ephraim is oppressed, crushed in judgment, because he was determined to go after vanity. Therefore I am like maggots to Ephraim. That's gross. And like rottenness to the house of Judah. When Ephraim saw his sickness and Judah his wound, then Ephraim went to Assyria and sent to the great king. Now, this is what I was talking about the very first session we had, where Assyria was making incursions from the east and then over into Syria and then down into Israel and eventually into Judah, but mostly into Syria and Israel. And so when that happened, the king of Israel at the time decided to appease the king of Assyria by paying tribute and becoming a vassal, or a satellite nation was the first step. So paying taxes and tribute to Assyria to keep them from coming in and destroying them. So it's a political appeasement strategy, not unlike World War II, right? When the Germans started moving their might into France, right? The French official government appeased them. And then you had this, rump government that was trying to say, no, let's fight against the Germans. So it's obviously a strategy to try to keep them from exterminating you. You appease them. You pay what they want. Does that make sense to you?
So rather than turning to God, they turn to Assyria.
Right. Exactly. Rather than, or we could say, rather than trusting that God is going to preserve them, God is going to, keep them safe, they decided to go ahead and do what Assyria wanted, which was pay tax and tribute. But he is not able to cure you or heal your wound. He, the king of Assyria. For I will be like a lion to Ephraim, and like a young lion to the house of Judah. I myself will tear and go away. I will carry off, and no one shall rescue. I will return again to my place until they acknowledge their guilt and seek my face. In their distress, they will beg my favor. So again, looking back, this is all written down, right? Centuries later, this is exactly what happened. The Assyrians came in, they exerted more and more influence over the northern kingdom of Israel. They eventually turned it into a province of Assyria, and they renamed it Samarina from the capital Samaria. They called it Samarina, and it was just one of the provinces of Assyria, just like any other province across the entire empire. And Judah kept their head down and tried to not be noticed, because Assyria was conquering everything in its sight. And Judah actually relied on Egypt some to come up and help, but mostly they just tried to be invisible. And as I said before, and you already know, Assyria removed most of the Israelites that lived in the northern kingdom and resettled them on the eastern edges of the empire. So what would now be India, that in that direction, Afghanistan, that in that area, Pakistan, and brought those people and settled them in the land of Israel, which they renamed Samarina. Now, not all the Israelites were deported. Of course, there were some peasants left behind to work the fields. And those Israelites that were left behind eventually intermarried and so forth with these foreigners that had been resettled in the land of Israel. And all those people were called Samaritans because they were the capital city of Samaria and the province of Samarina. So the people who lived there were called Samaritans. And of course, that's a centuries-old hostility between the Samaritans and the Israelites in Judah, who were called Jews as a short form of Judah. So the Samaritans and the Jews had a long-standing enmity because the people of Judah thought that the people of the north, the Samaritans, were half-breeds and not true worshipers of God. So, of course, when Jesus comes on the scene, the Samaritans are the centuries-old enemy. And it all goes back to this time period that we're reading about in Hosea, which was, again, around, let's just say 700. 721 is when the northern kingdom was captured by Assyria and turned into a province, and all these people were resettled. So 750 years this has been happening when Jesus shows up. That's a long time to hold a grudge. But as you know, grudges are long in the Middle East. We think we can just go in there and change things, but yeah, not so much. Questions about any of that? Comments?
Makes sense. Fine.
Okay, good. Okay, now God's plan is that God will return to God's place, whatever that means, until they acknowledge their guilt and seek, because once they realize that this is not working against Assyria, that Assyria is just going to get more and more violent, then they will beg for God's favor. They will realize the error of their ways and say, okay, we need to turn back to God. So now 1 through 3 of chapter 6 is their Hosea's imagining the people returning to God. So resting my voice, could somebody read 6, 1 through 3?
Come, let us return to the Lord, for it is he who has torn, and he will heal us. He has struck down, and he will bind us up. After 2 days, he will revive us, and on the third day, he will raise us up, that we may live before him. Let us press on to know the Lord. His appearing is as sure as the dawn. He will come to us like the showers, like the spring rains that water the earth.
Isn't that beautiful? I mean, it's basically a poem of confession, right? Or reconciliation. Let's return to know the Lord. There again is the theme for Hosea. Let us know the Lord. He will come like showers and like spring rains. Now, when you live in the desert, shower and spring rains are life-giving, right? You can't live without them. Let's go back to verse 2, because this has been, taken up by Christians to mean on the third day, like resurrection, Jesus. But in the Bible, the third day just means a short time, in a very short time. So it doesn't carry all the weight of the third day resurrection that we might think. It just means in a short while. 2 days will be revived, after 3 days will be fully restored.
Well, this is also like that resurrection happens as a result of what Israel does, as opposed to the resurrection has nothing to do with what we do.
Yes. In the sense that you mean they return to the Lord. That's what they do.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. There was no
Yeah.
return between Good Friday and Easter Sunday.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's return. Let's know the Lord. And then this assurance, I love this. His appearing is as sure as the dawn. Just as sure as the sun's going to come up tomorrow, we know that God will come. God will be present with us and revive us in the sense of showers and spring rains, right? That's a wonderful image, especially if you live in the desert. Doesn't mean so much to us here in North and South Carolina, but in the desert, the showers and the spring rains mean everything. And then we turn to God. God's response to this poignant return from the people. So 4 through 6 is God's answer. Somebody read that?
I'll read it.
Thank you.
What shall I do with you, O Ephraim? What shall I do with you, O Judah? Your love is like a morning cloud, like the dew that goes away early. Therefore I have hewn them by the prophets. I have killed them by the words of my mouth, and my judgment goes forth as the light. For I desire steadfast love and not sacrifice, the knowledge of God rather than burnt offerings.
Okay, so we have this kind of inner dialogue of God's heart. What shall I do with you? You say you want to come back. You say you want to love the Lord, but your love is like a morning cloud. What does that mean?
Dissipates.
Sorry?
It dissipates.
Dissipates, right. As soon as the sun comes up, it's gone. As soon as you see something else you like better, you run away to them. The Canaanite fertility gods. You're like the dew that goes away, right? You say you want to return to the Lord, but then In no time, you don't. So I've sent them the prophets and the words of my mouth and my judgment because they are ephemeral or fickle, we could say. And then verse 6, which gets quoted in Matthew, by the way. For I desire, there's that word chesed again, steadfast love, or as I say, acts of covenant loyalty. I desire acts of covenant loyalty rather than sacrifice. The knowledge of God, again, Hosea's theme, the knowledge of God rather than burnt offerings. Now, this, go ahead. Somebody say something. This has been misinterpreted down through the centuries. I want to tell you about this. Because when the Old Testament first began to be studied by Christians, not the Jewish rabbis, but when Christians took up seriously the study of the Old Testament in the 1800s, it was the Germans who led the way in Old Testament scholarship. And, you know, Germans, even back in the 1800s, were not fans of Jews. I mean, for centuries, the Jews had been, put down, right, ridiculed, kept from jobs, kept from education, et cetera, et cetera. So when the German scholars studied a verse like verse 6, they began to denigrate the worship rituals of the ancient Israelites, to say that, you know, these sacrifices and burnt offerings and all that, this is what God is criticizing in this, or Hosea, yeah, God and Hosea are criticizing the burnt offerings and the sacrifices, that was just gibberish, basically. And that attitude predominated for a long time. That the Israelite worship rituals were just nonsense. But then the Americans got involved, and other nations other than Germany in the 1900s, and realized, I think, that God is the one, according to the Bible, who commanded these worship rites. God is the one who set out all the rules for the burnt offerings and the sacrifices, right? The whole book of Leviticus is about how to do appropriate worship rituals. So it can't be that was just nonsense, because God commanded it. You see what I'm saying? So the tide has turned a little bit, that this is not a criticism of worship rituals per se. It's a criticism of worship rituals when they're not combined with acts of loyalty and knowledge and love. And Amos is the one that really makes this point. I think we studied Amos at one time together. But Amos is the one who says that there is no proper religious ritual without justice accompanying it and love. So even Amos says, you know, don't bother coming on Sunday morning if you're not going to act the way you should act Monday through Saturday. Don't think that you can just come on Sunday morning and do the rituals, kneel at the right time, drink wine and eat bread, and think you're good for the week. That's not how it works. That those rituals are meant to equip you to do justice and love covenant acts of loyalty in your life the rest of the time. Comments?
No, I'm good. That makes perfect sense.
Okay. How are we doing on, oh, we only have like 10 more minutes. Okay, let's see if we can get through the rest of this chapter. At Adam, they transgressed the covenant. There they dealt faithlessness with me. Gilead is a city of evildoers, tracked with blood. As robbers lie in wait for someone, so the priests are banded together. They murder on the road to Shechem. They commit a monstrous crime. In the house of Israel, I have seen a horrible thing. Ephraim's whoredom is there. Israel is defiled. For you also, O Judah, a harvest is appointed. So these cities, this section names various cities where there's a violation of the covenant. So Adam is a place, not the person in the Garden of Eden. This is a place. At Adam, they transgressed. It's near Jericho, which is in the southeast part of Israel. Gilead is on the east side of the Jordan, between the Dead Sea and the Sea of Galilee. And Shechem is in the central northern kingdom. So by naming these cities, what he's trying to do is show you that it's everywhere. It's in the south, it's in the north, it's in the east, it's in the west. It's everywhere around the territory and in the territory. That there are these transgressions of the covenant. There's faithlessness, there's blood, there's murder, there's adultery, whoredom with other gods. It's a complete mess from north to south and east to west. So you wonder what in the heck's going to happen. Yes?
Yeah.
Okay, let's see what happens. The second part of 11 really goes with the first part of 7. So when I would restore the fortunes of my people, when I would heal Israel, the corruption of Ephraim is revealed, and the wicked deeds of Samaria. There's Samaria again, shorthand for the northern kingdom. For they deal falsely, the thief breaks in, bandits raid outside. But they do not consider that I remember all their wickedness. They think they can just get away with it. Now their deeds surround them. They are before my face. By their wickedness, they make the king glad, and the officials by their treachery. So the elite of society, the king and the other officials, are delighted by all this treachery that's going on, robbery and bandits, and because of course they're getting a cut. So the people in charge who are supposed to be keeping all this from happening are actually participating in it. Then we move to a metaphor of an oven. They're all adulterers. They're like a heated oven whose baker does not need to stir the fire from the kneading of the dough until it's leavened. On the day of our king, the officials became sick at the heat of wine. They stretched out his hand with mockers. They are kindled like an oven. Their heart burns within them. All night their anger smolders. In the morning it blazes like a flaming fire. All of them are hot as an oven, and they devour their rulers. All their kings have fallen. None of them calls upon me. So you have this imagery of an oven flaring up with heat and a flame that's so strong that it overtakes even the kings. You don't even need to stoke the fire. It just keeps burning in a ridiculous heat. And in fact, this is played out in the Northern Kingdom around this time period, because the Northern Kingdom did not understand the dynastic principle the way the South did. The Southern Kingdom kept the dynasty of David. You had to be able to trace your lineage back to David, right, to become the next king. So David, Solomon, then Solomon's son, etc., on down the line. But the Northern Kingdom didn't use a dynasty. In fact, when they broke away from the South, it was a general, a military general, who took over as the king. And that pattern continued throughout the whole Northern Kingdom's existence. They had coup after coup after coup from these military people taking over, assassinating the previous king and taking over the throne. In the last 25 years of the Northern Kingdom, the last 25 years that it was in existence before Assyria took it over finally, they had 7 kings. So it was a bloody mess.
Now, who's like the oven? The people?
The people and the officials. See, in verse 4, they are all adulterers. They're like a heated oven. The they refers back to verse 3, the king and the officials. So this is about the people who are in charge. And even the people in charge, devour their rulers. They assassinate the guy who's king now so that they can become king. And like I said, that in the last 25 years of existence, they had 7 kings. So, you know, it was a complete mess. Okay, let's see if we can do one more paragraph. Ephraim mixes himself with the peoples. Ephraim is a cake not turned. I have no idea what that means. Foreigners devour his strength, but he doesn't know it. Gray hairs are sprinkled upon him, but he doesn't know it, meaning his death is near. Gray hairs are sprinkled means he's about to die and he doesn't know it. Israel's pride testifies against him, yet they do not return to the Lord their God or seek him. Even though things are a complete mess, you've got all these assassinations taking place, political assassinations. The end is near, they don't know it, and they don't return to the Lord. Okay, we can do another maybe. Ephraim has become like a dove. I love this. Silly and without any sense. They call upon Egypt. They go to Assyria, right? They're in deep trouble politically, militarily, and they go to these stronger nations. Egypt, of course, is the strongest nation to the south of Israel, controlled that whole area down there. So they call upon Egypt to come and help them, or they go to Assyria to appease the king. As they go, I will cast my net over them, bring them down like birds of the air. I will discipline them according to the report made to their assembly. Woe to them, for they have strayed from me. Destruction to them, for they have rebelled against me. And then you keep getting these glimpses into God's heart. I would redeem them, but they speak lies against me. Right? You can almost hear God saying in God's heart, if they would just come back, if they would just stop this awful behavior and come back to me, I'm here waiting. but they won't do it. They keep going to the other big nations, Assyria and Egypt. They won't trust me to give them what they need. Well, I guess that's what they say next, right? Verse 14, they do not cry to me from the heart, but they wail upon their beds. They gash themselves for grain and wine. That is, they undertake religious rituals that I didn't prescribe. They rebel against me. It was I who trained and strengthened their arms, yet they plot evil against me. They turn to that which does not profit. They have become like a defective bow, as in bow and arrow. Their officials shall fall by the sword because of the rage of their tongue. So much for their babbling in the land of Egypt.
Great way to end that.
I
So
know.
much for the battling in the land of Egypt.
So it's this this disturbing picture of everything that's going wrong, right, in the Northern Kingdom. This reliance on these great nations of Syria and Egypt to try to stay out of trouble. This spiritual adultery by going after other gods, the lawlessness that's taking place with murder and robbery and killing people at a moment's notice, all this that's gone wrong in the nation of Israel. But yet there's this undercurrent of God's heart that shows through that says, if they would just come back to me, they don't know me. Maybe they'll say, come on, let's get back to God, and I can be like showers in the desert for them. I trained them. I brought them up, but they still don't recognize me as their God. It's this sad kind of juxtaposition of the way the people are behaving and the way God wants them to behave. Comments?
Just seems awfully familiar.
Does, doesn't it? And yet it's, right, 2,700 years old.
When will we learn?
Oh. All right, that does it for me for today.
Thank you so much. This was
Yeah.
great.
The end of chapter 7. We're doing really well. I didn't think we'd be going this fast. Because we have 2 more weeks, right?
3. This
3
was
more
week
weeks.
3. Yeah,
Yeah, 3 more weeks.
I think we'll make it through the whole thing.
I think we will.
Awesome. We'll be able to write a commentary when we're done.
Okay, y'all have a good week.